Dan, you scared me so much. I'm like afraid to talk. I think we're live now.
Okay.
Are we
Little
live?
practical jokes, folks, behind the scenes here.
Yes. Welcome to the Saratoga podcast. It's great to see you too. After Thanksgiving, back together, ready to talk Saratoga.
Yes. Hey, you guys have a good Thanksgiving?
Adam?
Yeah, it was fantastic. We're lucky. My brother and sister and mom and dad all live in the area, so we're very blessed to be able to. It hasn't always been that way, but spent it all together. All the cousins get along. It was great. How about you guys?
That's awesome. Mine sucked, but Dan, how was yours?
The Thanksgiving itself was good. The kids have been sick all weekend into this week. Just got back from the doctors this morning. You know, the bug, it's going around. The flu, thank God, not COVID, but flu. So that was bad. But I cooked Thanksgiving dinner for the first time in my life. First time I ever cooked a turkey. And I can cook, but cooking a turkey is kind of a new thing. My 9-year-old daughter helped me straight through. You know, sometimes she'll help me for 3 minutes and get distracted and disappear on me. She helped me for hours and hours and hours. That was a very touching experience.
You can send her over to my house at dinner time.
I was gonna say, it's fun when the kids hit those milestones where they become. And I have children. I have a 9-year-old, where they start to become little human beings instead of little POAs.
Yeah. Well, she's motivated. She loves cooking. I found her passion. I really think it's cooking.
Well, we digress. But
yeah, there's lots to talk about.
I know we do have a lot to talk about. Okay, so let's not skip the headline here. We had a big shooting. There's been a lot of fallout since. It's high drama. It's really all kind of crazy. I don't even know where to begin with it. I mean, just the shooting in and of itself, you guys, I have to say, I woke up on Sunday morning and my phone was just flooded with text messages, and you just get this like pit in your stomach, because the first time I went out for a ride along in Saratoga was back in July 2019. And I was out from around 8 o'clock at night till 5 in the morning. And my number one takeaway from being out, and it was like an August Saturday night, so it was like jamming. The very first thought I had when I got home was how susceptible we were to a mass casualty situation, basically, downtown. And like that was my greatest fear and greatest takeaway from seeing what it's like at peak craziness in August on a Saturday night, and the level of and the number of police officers we have to keep everybody safe amidst that chaos. So, waking up to this news on Sunday that there had been a shooting just sent a chill down my spine.
It wasn't a shooting; it was a shootout, which is it's even one step farther than a shooting.
Creating an officer-involved shooting.
Officers,
plural,
as it turns out that. But the one of the people involved in the shootout was a police officer. But the first thing is, I think we can all, just be very grateful that there was no casualties. But Dan, as a former police officer, how often? I mean, this I understand. I'm a big advocate for good. I mean, and this is a bad example of this, but a big advocate for good guys carrying firearms.
Oh God, really?
This went bad quickly. Dan, as a police officer, do you ever feel how often do they carry pistols with them? And in situations like this is pretty unprecedented, right? You wouldn't go into a bar with one.
And since I don't know too much about this, I don't want to criticize this off-duty officer deputy too much. But to go into a crowded bar where you yourself presumably are going to be drinking, that's I've known cops that do it regularly. They carry everywhere. Kind of the joke, they're at a wedding and they're packing. Like, are you expecting trouble at the buffet? So there are always cops that are carrying all the time. I wasn't one of them, but it's a concern. If you're going to be out drinking that much into a crowded bar,
guns and alcohol, generally speaking,
I'm sorry,
not usually. Guns and alcohol tend to not really get along.
Exactly. And there have been plenty of incidents. This isn't the first. This won't be the last with an off-duty cop and possibly alcohol and firearms.
But what was so terrifying there was so much that was terrifying about it. But of course, it's the immediate social media push of everyone wanting to know the details and just rumors flying around that there was fatalities. Nobody knows what's happening. And everyone's just like searching for information at this really rapid, crazy, intense pace. And I think it's a really unhealthy way to respond to these kind of incidents, because, again, Dan, as you know, police departments and police investigations move at a very different pace than social media or our need for information. And they move at a different pace for a reason, because they're conducting an investigation and they have to go through the proper protocols and proper steps to hopefully solve the crime and arrest whoever's responsible. And so because those two timelines don't match up, it just creates this frenzy of rumors and speculation that can be really damaging and scary, I think.
Yeah. One thing I saw on social media, which was a little upsetting, was a number of people immediately went to gangbangers from Albany, Schenectady coming, keep Albany out. And it was really upsetting that people would just, kind of just default to this narrative that, with these racial overtones, that this wasn't that case. This was probably a young, police officer getting roughed up and switched into, after drinking, made some poor choices and slipped into police officer mode.
Well, yeah. Don't you think, I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Oh yeah. And the extension of that on social media. First of all, I got to point out though, the good of social media is, Adam, once again, what's going on Saratoga Facebook page, even if some of that is not precisely accurate, generally it beats the standard press, the traditional press, by several hours in getting out mostly accurate information. That's pretty impressive. There's been a run of that lately. Shooting at Walmart up in Queensbury. I found out about it on what's going on in Saratoga. There are flip sides of that where, like you said, the conclusions, the hasty conclusions, as well as the extension of that. Now, there was someone writing, it's the Democrats' fault, and blah, 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 you damn liberals, and that got into stupid Facebook ugliness. It's the good and the bad.
I find that especially when it's, people who go to this, like it's gang violence right away. And to me, it is totally out of this, like, it can't be someone like us. This isn't something that we would do in Saratoga. It has to be outside people, because this kind of violence would never happen with Saratogians, Yeah. And I find that to be such an unfortunate perspective for people to have. And, in June 2021, we did have some gang violence. And because of that one instance, I think people just ran with it, and it became such a just shitty conversation kind of topic whenever there was violence downtown.
Yeah, do you remember going back? There was that one weekend where it was like,
yeah, I remember,
going to rape all the women in Saratoga.
Yeah,
one weekend.
This was June 28th.
Like, what's that?
I remember it exactly. It was the weekend of June 26th, 27th. Yeah.
Yeah, because you were public safety commissioner then. Boy.
Yeah. There was a rumor going around that there were gangs they were doing gang rapes at the Adelphi. I was like, I'm sorry. People kept forwarding it to me. I was like, this is the most absurd thing I've ever read. Like, guys, like, let's use our heads here. Do we really think there's like Bloods and Crips, like, grabbing women and running them into the Adelphi to gangbang them? Like,
spending $500 a night on
get a fucking
upscale. But the one, I will say this though, the flip side of just going to this narrative of gangs in Albany and Troy, it's the same. It's the same narrative when there is a police shootout of we saw this with our police officer in Darrell Mount. Oh, the police must be racist and must have killed Darrell Mount. Before any kind of it was, well, I mean, there was an investigation with Jim Montanino's report, but it's just people have to not fit these things into their narratives.
I know
on both sides, and they have to, and there's still, like Dan said, a lot of facts to come out. Who were these Utica? The people involved. Was this officer's life in danger? Why did he not put down his weapon? And boy, you got to feel for this poor Saratoga police officer. I think we all heard her, the body cam and heard her this is not, Dan, I would imagine you could probably confirm this. This is not a situation. Police trained for this, but you don't want to find yourself in that split second decision of having to theoretically take a life or not.
Yeah. I mean, this deputy that was shot, apparently as many as 10 times, or at least he had 10 shots in him. It could have been multiple through limbs and so forth. How he survived, I don't know. But let me just point out, and you guys know this, most people know this, this has already created like 3 different issues. You got the original criminal investigation. We still don't know much about that. Presumably there will be arrests made at some point. Then you got the gag order on Jim Montanino and Ron Kim. And then you got the 2 a.m. closing time. This one incident is now at least in 3 parts. Maybe you could make the case it's 5 or 6 parts. All their own story and offshoot. it being Saratoga, nothing is ever simple.
Let's go to the
I will
gag
say,
order. Robin, you wanna give us a little
well, actually,
background?
I'm actually going to have us pause if you guys don't mind, because we have Commissioner Sanghvi on, and if we could go to her and then go back to all the offshoots from the shootout story, I think that would probably be the best way to handle it. But suffice to say, I am very familiar with the aftermath of these kind of incidents and the push for the 2 a.m. closing, the placing blame, et cetera, et cetera. But I just have to say, listening to our officers and seeing video of our officers having to make that split-second decision of whether they're going to shoot someone who's pointing a gun at them or not is one of the most like terrifying and gut-wrenching things I've ever witnessed. And a few years ago, there was an incident near Geyser Road Elementary where there was someone armed who was, running, and they were pursuing someone who had a weapon. And I saw the body cam footage of it. And this man turned and raised his weapon at one of our officers. And he ended up putting his weapon down, and our officer did not discharge their weapon, but certainly could have and would have been justified. But seeing it and knowing the person, I just can't fathom that split-second decision and all the emotions going through your mind. It's got to be so traumatic. Anyway, we can pick this up after we talk to Commissioner Sanghvi. So we're going to do a total left turn here, and we're going to talk budgets. Commissioner, how are you?
I'm good. How's everybody doing?
We're good. Thank you
Great.
so much for joining us.
And I do want to point out, Dan, well, first of all, Robin, you're absolutely right. Seeing that body cam footage was very raw, and you see sort of the, that split-second decision. So, and I think it did help the community also sort of see that what it was, and sort of that transparency really helped people. I personally have heard from a lot of people saying that was very good. But Dan, about your gag order, sorry, I was listening to you guys. It was so fascinating.
Yeah, chime in. We were talking about, but this is, you're on the city council, commission form of government. This is going to affect, finance as well. So please, give us your thoughts.
The gag order is not just for Ron Kim and Jim Montanino. It's for all elected officials and every single public employee that's at City Hall.
Oh, so we're going to follow up with a ton of questions then for you about it. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But it's not just 2 people; it's the whole City Hall. And
Clarification.
How do you muzzle all the public employees? It's just astounding. And Tony Izzo, our city attorney, said that he's never seen this in his 38 years out here.
That is true. Although I will say, this is just based on my public safety, department and working with those guys. They really understand how they have to respect the pace of the investigation and the dissemination of information. And I think City Hall, generally speaking, gets that because they live and work with the police department.
Yeah.
But it made me think about, I think it was last summer, there was, the police were pursuing someone who was on a motorcycle and basically crashed on his motorcycle right on Lake and Broadway.
Yeah.
And initially, the immediate reaction was that there was police involvement. They'd been too close, and they were responsible for the crash. And body camera footage was released very quickly, and it showed the context of what had happened. And there was no police involvement. It was just a guy going way too fast late at night and crashing. And so I do think the immediate transparency of seeing that footage and showing the context of the incident is very helpful. But at the same time, weighing that with what you're hearing from your police chief about the investigation and whether it's going to hinder or, help the investigation. If I was being told, and I was told this many times, we can't release this because we're investigating it by doing these steps. And if you release that, it's going to hinder our ability to, pursue this person and bring them to justice. And so I always defer to that, which I know is really frustrating for our community, especially in the age of social media when we all expect everything right now.
There's a balance there.
Yeah, and speculation is not your friend.
Speculation is definitely not.
So congratulations on the budget.
Yes,
congrats.
I always remember Commissioner Madigan, after the budget passed, just walking out of the City Hall council room, cheering, because it's such a big achievement, and it's got to feel so good to have it unanimously passed.
Oh, absolutely. And Commissioner Madigan was really helpful. There were a point where I was I'm stuck and I'm not sure what to do. And I reached out to her and she gave really good advice. And, it was really helpful just to have someone to talk to about something that I know she's been through. So, but yeah,
that's
absolutely.
great that
that is
all the
so
politics
great.
in the city, you and the former commissioner have a working relationship. That's so important. That's
That
so
is
good.
Yeah.
that is so awesome. We just have to take a moment to applaud that because I wish more of that happened, you know? It's such a weird and unique experience being in any one of the city council positions. And so talking to someone who's been through it is it's great. So I'm glad that was helpful.
And we've not always seen eye to eye, but I know she understands what it's like being here, and I respect her for having been through 10 budget seasons. I mean, oh my God.
Right? Can you imagine? Like, honest to God, it is kind of wild because the process that our charter sets us up for going through the budget, it just kind of is inherently dramatic in a way. I think we lost Dan, but he'll come back on. It's just kind of inherently dramatic because you have everybody asking for whatever they want, shooting for the moon, and then you got to come back with like a dose of reality, and then you've got to workshop it, and there's going to be arguments and this, that, and the other, and then finally, hopefully, you get to a resolve. And to me, it's always the ultimate goal to have all 5 council members vote on something unanimously. And so I would love it if you could take us through, because it got so granular, I lost kind of where we were. I would love it if you could take us through some of the highlights of where we ended up for next year.
So first off, our budget is $57 million. And if you want exact numbers, it's $56,722.80.
Memorize that, Adam Israel.
And that's a 5% increase from 2022. So our main sources of revenue, we are expecting about 17.4 million in sales tax this year. That's sort of our projected. So we kept that, considering sort of the winds of recession and stuff like that, we kept that at 17.5 for next year. Do
you mind? I'm sorry if I'm interrupting. That seems to me like one of the most difficult things to predict because of our tourist-based economy and how much we have like an increase in the summer. Although if something goes wrong, the dramatic decrease in the summer, it just seems like one of the harder numbers to project.
Yeah. So if you had an economy that was just like a regular town that mostly relied on property tax, then, most of your base is there. For us, sales tax and property tax are almost equal. So, we have that base, but in good news, we don't have to go back to that base again and again and again because sales tax helps us and it's been doing really well. So good news, bad news. But we did increase property tax just a touch. It's at 2.88%. So if your house is assessed at $200,000, you'll be paying $3 more a month. And if your house is assessed at $400,000, you'll be paying $6 more a month, approximately.
$6. That's like 2 of these Diet Cokes, Minita. I don't know how I'm going to do it.
Well, I will say that's in Saratoga, $400,000 is. But yes, if it's you can extrapolate that out, it's still not a huge number.
It's pretty modest.
If you look at that, that's assessed value. That's not actual value.
Yeah. So, and we're only assessed at about 85% of our property value.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Right.
It's not even that on the east side. For the most
there you
part.
go. That's why.
Yeah. So I think it's just like it's such a political talking point. I think raising taxes or not raising taxes. And I think it's important to definitely double down on what the percentage is and what it is in real life, as opposed to just say, oh, taxes are going up, let's freak out.
Let me ask you.
If I could interrupt with a question. Oh,
I'm sorry. Can I just clarify? The reason why we are raising taxes is specifically because we are building the 3rd fire station. And, we had the fire station in 1930. That's the one at Lake. We have the fire station in 1970. That was on West Avenue. And we're building literally at this point the 3rd fire station on 5th and Henning, and it's a once in a generation expense, and we needed the community to come together to help with that. But so this is not something that we are hoping to do every year. It's something that when the moment needed it, we thought this is the time to go to the community.
Wait.
I have a question about that, Adam, really quick. Do you mind? I'm sorry, just to follow up on that. So are you guys anticipating that the expense of the fire station will go beyond the number that's been bonded already? Is that because I thought that the money had been already gone out to bond and it had been covered? So is it just to anticipating changes?
No. So the money is, obviously the building of the fire station, we bonded.
Right.
And some of that did increase because of inflation, and we bonded that too.
Right.
But this is the day-to-day working of it, right? The buying of, materials and uniforms, and we are hiring 16 new firefighters. And the Safer grant covers for their salary and their benefits, but it doesn't cover for all the working parts of it, you know? So all the working pieces of the fire station, the setup, all of that, you know, takes expense. And, you know, we thought that this was a good moment to say, can the community come together? And $3 a month, like you said, you know, is not a very large expense. And so we tried our best to keep
grant has a life that was going to pay for the salaries for these 16 firefighters. Is it 2 years or 3 years?
It's 3 years. It'll pay for it for 3 years. And then in 2026, so our plan right now is we are hoping that cannabis revenues, and of course we'll be working on the forecasting of that, that cannabis revenues will help for some of those pieces.
I will help support that effort.
Yes. And we're also trying to, at this point, look at short-term rental. And, you know, I know Commissioner Moran has had a couple of forums on it.
About that.
So, you know, we're looking at, can we get revenue from all these Airbnb and verbal rentals that are out there? And you know, in what format can that be? And hopefully that can add to the revenues for our city. Because, you know, a lot of times when somebody is rented out an Airbnb and there's an incident, the fire department takes that call and is there and has to go into a building. They need to know how many people are in there, you know, how's the building set up. And some of the, you know, like you're expecting 4 people and then suddenly there's like 20 people in there because you know, so
I was actually tasked with looking into this very issue in like January 2020. The city, I think it was kind of like my hazing. They were like, you're going to be in charge of figuring out how we're going to make money off the Airbnbs. But it was super frustrating because at the end of the day, much like the 2 a.m. closing time, it all comes down to the county. And working with the county has not been fruitful for the last several years. So it just is, again, frustrating. But carry on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. So we are hoping for new revenues that we're exploring very actively, and with the cannabis thing, that's much more a reality right now. And we know, like, you know, we're going to get 3% of it. So we are hoping that will help.
Do you have a timeline on that? I mean, is there any thought of when we're going to see dispensaries or when that's going to happen? How's it going to look? I kind
of know that. Commissioner Sanghvi, if you want to jump in, feel free. I just happen to have a friend who was hired to work in the cannabis department for New York State over the summer. And so I've been getting kind of regular updates from him. And they're pretty behind. It's a shit show, basically. They're very behind. Governor Hochul promised that there was going to be some number of dispensaries open by the end of the calendar year. And that put the entire department into like a total tizzy. They're not sure they can get that accomplished at all. So I think it's still going to be a little while.
So we were very conservative in our estimate for 2023. We've estimated only $250,000 in cannabis revenue for 2023, just because we knew that there were delays that were happening. There's supposed to be 7 licenses given in the capital region.
That was my next question. 7 licenses. Okay.
And we know
for the capital region.
Capital region, yes. And we know the towns around us, many of them have not opted in. So like Milton has not opted in, and you know, a bunch of places. So
that was wild to me, but great for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, what we're going to see is a lot of traffic coming into Saratoga Springs. And to be fair, you know, we have a little bit of the reputation anyway with the, you know, the racino and the nightlife. So it kind of makes sense too. You know,
I agree.
It's a fun party place. So
I agree. Although I think, you know, when we were talking about where it would be zoned, we would put zoning for dispensaries. I think it was really an important decision to put it in this kind of rural commercial area. So like just outside of town where you have parking and much bigger spaces versus trying to put dispensaries on Caroline or Phyla or Broadway, where I just think it would be difficult for the customer and also difficult for our already overburdened downtown.
Yeah.
the thing that makes me nervous about this is just the fact that you can illegally smoke marijuana where you can smoke a cigarette, which is Broadway, or where families are in Congress Park, and that's just that I think that lends itself for not having dispensaries right in these populated downtown areas. But let's switch gears here. You came out with the proposed budget. You got some pushback on that.
The comprehensive budget
show or not, but it just seemed you had a big fund balance. How tempted was it to dip into that fund balance? How come you kept the fund balance high? Can you just, and this is getting a little technical, but it's something I think people are interested in is our fund balance, our saving account, and the easy thing would be just to dip in your saving account and throw out money, but you stayed away from doing that. What was your logic there?
So, for our comprehensive budget, which comes from the finance department, we try to have a much more conservative approach, just because as an accountant, I'd rather be conservative and then be pleasantly surprised. So at that point, we had estimated using only about $500,000 of our fund balance. Eventually, because the comprehensive budget was $54 million, and we eventually had to get to 57, which is where we ended up. We did use more of the fund balance. So at this point, we are using $1.65 million of the fund balance, 500,000 from restricted, 115,000 from assignment, and about $1,030,000 from unassigned fund balance. But for me, one of the key pieces I learned from COVID was that this can happen to our city any point of time, and we need to be prepared. And we know that we had to borrow $11.6 million. Just to keep our lights on, and it was a short-term thing. We paid it back. Everything was fine. But our reserves dipped to less than 10% during that time.
Yeah, we went from healthy fund balance to zero in 3 months.
Yeah. And so if, we know COVID is not completely gone. Climate change is a reality. Buffalo, for example, suddenly was stopped. I'm not saying that that's going to happen here, for example. But what I'm saying is that I want to make sure our city is prepared for if there's an emergency. We're not, sort of using all the fund balance reserves thinking, oh, there's so much money here, and then stuck without it. So,
and certainly the VLT money is always an issue every January, which is $2.3 million, goes to public works and public safety. And almost every year it's on the chopping block, and there's drama about whether we're going to get it or not. So, potentially having this kind of bigger fund balance might offset some of that.
And we did. I had a conversation with Assemblywoman Warner to make sure that what were her thoughts about VLT, and I think Governor Cuomo had a different take on VLT monies versus Governor Hochul
and his predecessors, by the by. It wasn't just Cuomo, and I'm not a guy to stick up for Cuomo, but it goes even before him. If I could jump in here, going back to the firefighters, this is probably more a question for Jim Montanino, but since we have you here and you're paying for them, do you know, are they available? Are they on the list? Do we have is there a robust list that they can hire? It used to be 20 years ago, you could hire cops and firefighters, no problem. That's become a challenge, at least on the police side. Is that paved, or is that going to be an issue, or is that something we should follow up with Commissioner Montanino on?
Yeah, you should definitely follow up with him.
I can speak to that a little bit, because I
believe some are in training, right? Am I right?
Yes. Yeah, so we had started. I think we hired 6 last year to start training. But the civil service test, we had a pretty healthy response to, and I went to the physical part of it where they do the running and all the push-ups, sit-ups, and there was a good crew. It was the police department that has suffered more in terms of recruitment rather than the fire department. And I think in the upstate New York community, people really see Saratoga Springs as a good place to be a fireman. And because you also have obviously the EMT component, and so you wear 2 hats. You're running ambulances and you're putting out fires. But it's a great group, and so I wouldn't anticipate there being staffing challenges. The only thing that I was kind of miffed by when this was all being discussed by the current city council was that the mayor and Commissioner Montanino repeatedly said that the previous city councils had not prepared for this fire station with staffing, which I just found to be so egregious, because we actually had by hiring 6 new firefighters. But also, how could I explain to the public that I was going to say bring on 16 firefighters to sit around for 2 years while a building gets built. I mean, that's just, you just wouldn't do that. So I kind of, whatever, that's just like a personal little thing. I thought we prepared for it extremely well, especially Chief Dolan and Chief Dyer. They're so good at managing this and planning for it. And they're so data driven and so organized. It's really remarkable. So everything was planned, in my opinion, perfectly.
Commissioner, let me ask you a question. You have this budget.
Adam, one second. I'll also reply to Dan. Dan, one of the other pieces also is that, like Robin said, we are considered desirable in Saratoga Springs. Keep in mind, we are one of the few around here that pays, it's not volunteer firefighters. We're actually paying the firefighters. And I think that also is a key piece here. Is a lot of around surrounding areas, it's volunteer firefighters.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, just basically everywhere in New York State that's not a city, with a few limited exceptions. It's the cities that have the paid departments and the towns and villages that have the volunteers, with occasionally a full-timer thrown in there. But yeah.
And a lot of our firefighters actually continue to volunteer at other departments, which I think is really admirable and just, again, shows their dedication to their profession and their community.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, back to Adam.
Yeah, no problem. So switching gears a little bit, what were the from the different departments that requested like $100 million, right? And you had to cut it down to 58 million. So obviously you can't put everything in there, but is there a project? I saw you guys got sidewalks in, that was great, but is on the west side, but is there a project that next year you really like to see get in the budget? Something that you really wanted to get in and you just couldn't get in?
Good question.
I think what we want to do is forecast better for, coming years. I think that's one of our key pieces that we want to look at. I know eventually the water plant needs upgrades and repairs. So our plan January onwards is to start working with each department and looking at, what are their future needs, 5-year needs, 10-year needs, and see how we can start better planning for it now. One of the things that I am excited about with this budget is that DPW is hoping to have an app. So we will know when our roads get plowed and we will know when our leaves get picked up and stuff like that. So I think
you go, Jason.
Jason's doing a fantastic job, at DPW, and Mike Weech and Joe O'Neill have been incredible. And so they're really sort of taking DPW, to its next level. And the sidewalks obviously is a big part of this. The app, they're doing more recycling, so we've put in a recycling laborer.
Yes.
So I think there's a lot more interesting stuff happening. I would love to see more recreation stuff in the future. I think Saratoga Springs is growing. There are a lot of young children.
Yeah.
I know Robin, Dan, Adam, all of us have young children, who use these rec services, and so
it's like the only affordable option for kids' sports. I mean, in my opinion, like for summer camp and whatnot, it's truly like the actual only option that's affordable, especially if you have more than one kid.
So I want to see that expanded. And I spoke to John Herleman about that, how can we expand this? What are some of the ways, they would like to, do more programming? And we were able to help him with the Camp Saratoga counselor by putting it in right sizing. So, we tried lots of creative ways to get to, but I would love to see more monies go towards recreation in the coming years too.
The other really special thing about the rec department is that it's every kid from all walk of life using the rec department, the facilities, sports, Camp Saratoga. And it's just, I just love seeing that as a community member, that our kids, from different neighborhoods, socioeconomic, they're coming up from all different places and they're all playing together. And I just think it's a really special thing that we have here.
Yeah. And recreation departments are doing so many interesting things across the country. I would love to see more of, that here in Saratoga Springs too.
Absolutely. So can we talk about really quick the police department, because I know on the heels of obviously the shootout, I know that I think there was more money added to the police department's budget. I also have to say though, I was really disappointed to see Commissioner Montanino in the workshop for public safety really browbeat you and, in my opinion, be really disrespectful in terms of how he was discussing what you were proposing and what he wanted. And I have to commend you for keeping your cool as much as you did, but I would hope that in the future, there could be more professionalism on that end, because I just thought it was really unnecessary. But where did we end up with the police department budget?
Right. So the police department is still 60% of our budget, which I want you to note, because in many places your property tax pays for all city hall employees. Our property tax doesn't even pay for a public safety budget. Yeah. So just to keep that in sort of in mind, it's 34 million is where we ended up, and they had asked for. Give me a second. They had asked for
like 44, maybe
41. Yeah. And we had come back with 31 point something. And so, they went down about, what is it?
7 maybe.
Yeah. So they went down 7 million and we went up 3 million. So one of the things, we did do, we had cut some of the places in the police budget based on actuals versus, ideals. So they wanted 80 police officers, which I totally understand, but we had only on file, like actually 74 police officers. And so that's what we used to budget for in the comprehensive budget. But yeah,
sorry, the police department's never been able to reach actually the capacity that it's budgeted for. Like we've never been able to hit that 80,
right.
Even when it's budgeted.
We had money set aside in the right sizing assignment. And I said, listen, when you want to hire your 6 police officers, feel free. And that's what I tried to explain all through that budget workshop. But, it's sort of one of those, like, you're defunding the police. And I'm like, I'm not defunding the police. We are absolutely funding the police. But yeah, so we also put money in for ballistic vests. For Axon technology. So that's the body cam technology that you saw in the video, which is really useful and it's part of the police reform task force recommendations. So, we've spent money on that.
Although I just want to say we have had probably the most comprehensive body camera system of any law enforcement agency in the state for the last several years. The state police just rolled it out, and we have had body cameras for 7 years, dash cams, body cams, backseat cameras. So I just want to point that out. But to improve the technology is even better.
Absolutely. And, IT works with public safety to get that process going. And, they've been doing a lot of great work down there. We got Jeff, sort of showed us how all the different technologies work and how they, function.
It is a bit of a nightmare. Go ahead.
I have a follow-up question. It's related to this. If I'm hitting you from left field, that's let me know and we'll follow up with you down the road. But the proposal to renegotiate the police contract, 12 hours of time, I haven't heard.
What happened to that?
In months and months and months. That's related to the budget, I would assume. Where does that stand?
It stands nowhere at this point. It was not related to the budget because it was a union issue. They, it was public safety wanted to change the
he said 12 hours was too long.
And the union said, well, if you're opening that, then, we want to talk about everything. And it would have cost us 600,000 more on top of, what we were doing already. And so I said that was sort of unsustainable and the police didn't want it. More importantly, we had discussions with the police and they were like, we don't want this. We are happy with where we are. So
thank you for having that discussion with them. I appreciate it.
So,
you would think that the head of the department
is that issue dead? Completely dead?
I believe the Commissioner of Public Safety may think that it's still very much, something he might want to pursue someday. But as of this point, it's not in the budget. As of this point, from a finance perspective, it's not.
Well, and Dan, the reason that he was complaining about the 12-hour shifts and he cited like a few examples of people working, really long hours was because there was a minimum staffing level that needed to be maintained to make the 12-hour shifts work. And during Commissioner Montanino's term, that staffing level dipped below the minimum level, which, just excuse my language, was screwed up. I'm going to say screwed up, not effed up, screwed up the whole 12-hour system. But now that there have been new hires and they've gotten above that minimum level again, there isn't the issue with, people working 12, 18-hour shifts 2 days in a row and whatnot. So that was really at the core of the issue, not this like random sleep study and, I don't know, arbitrary other stuff that Commissioner Montanino was pointing to.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying that issue to us.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Sanghvi, I know we've taken so much of your time, but I want to.
I feel that I've taken up all you guys.
No,
I could do this all day long.
I was thinking the same thing. Adam, Dan, do you guys have any other questions? I know I've been talking a lot.
No, appreciate you coming on. Again, congratulations. I know it was from where you were started to now was a process to get this budget done and passed. And we got here and we wish you all the best in the city council and making the right decisions for the city. So thank you for spending a little time.
It was definitely a little trying. You have 4 new commissioners who didn't know the budget process. We our budget director went on leave like 3 weeks before the first budget was due. So it was a lot of, sort of that perfect storm moment. And we spent a lot of hours here in City Hall. But I want to say kudos to our amazing team here in finance. And really a lot of the, Jason Golub and Mike Weech were really helpful. Ron Kim and Angela were really helpful. So there were a lot of people who came together, and eventually like everybody came together to help. But it was really helpful to have that,
A quick aside, congratulations on the your book has been published. It's out there for sale.
I mean, happy endings.
Yes, well done. That's exciting. Anyone that completely writes a book and gets it published, I tip my hat to. Can you say anything? We're just asking. Can you say anything about it? Have sales?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's available now on US Kindle, and it was #1 for a whole week on Amazon bestseller list for LGBTQ books in India. So
that's awesome.
That's really, I'm pretty happy.
That's awesome.
That smile says it all.
The Hindustan Times, which is like the New York Times of India, reviewed the book. So it's
that's awesome.
Getting some traction. I'm hoping that.
So what language is the book? What language did you write it in, and what languages is it available in?
It's all English.
All English.
I don't think I can write a book in any other language, honestly.
Pardon my English, but enough people in India speak English where.
Yeah, India has the largest English-speaking population in the world.
I know that.
And India has the largest number of magazines and newspapers of any country in the world. So it has a large, population that reads English, that, because, just like America, it was a British colony, right?
Right,
so
right.
English is used in both as one of the official languages.
I just have to tell you, Commissioner Sanghvi, really, she's making us all look bad, all right? Because she's the finance commissioner, she's a mom, she's a wife, she freaking publishes a book. I'm like, lady.
Professor.
Professor in Skidmore. I mean, I'm like, I don't know how she does it. I know people say that all the time, but like, truly, I don't know how you do it. And so maybe you could have like a seminar about like time management or something that we could all attend, because it's just you wear so many hats. It's really impressive.
And I can confirm she does it. I bumped into her at Price Chopper less than a week ago. She's actually shopping. It's not like she has elves doing some of the side.
Dan, don't make me feel even worse, okay? I haven't gone to the grocery store. I get it. And then also our own Adam Israel is sometimes challenged with pronunciation. And it's one of the things I actually find most charming about him. He says, he looks at the word meme and he says meme. So I just French way. That's the French way.
Are you apologizing for all the times I hack her name?
No, I thought maybe we could just have one last try of Commissioner Sanghvi saying her name, and maybe Adam could repeat it correctly. I don't know.
Let's hear it.
So Adam, imagine you're saying sung as in S-U-N-G, sung.
Sung.
V-E-E.
Sanghvi.
That's it.
Sanghvi.
Yeah.
Right. I just think the A in your name. I got to just imagine a U there, and I'll get it.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of Indian names. If for example, if you see A-N-J-A-L-I, Anjali, most people will say Anjali, but it's actually Anjali. So it's a U-H. Imagine a U-H in most A's. And
all right, one name at a time here, Commissioner.
So Sanghvi.
Yeah.
It's
All
okay.
right, Commissioner Sanghvi. Well, thank you very much for spending a little time with us and
Thank you.
explaining your
Bye
process.
bye. See ya.
We hope you come on
Thank you
again.
so much. Well, hey guys.
That was,
All right.
that was
super
very
informative.
enlightening. That was very
Yeah,
good.
it really was. It really
Yeah.
was. That was super helpful, actually. And I appreciate Commissioner Sanghvi spending so much time with us. I know, as we just mentioned, she's a freaking pretty busy lady.
Yeah. Should we switch gears? I mean,
Yeah, let's switch gears. Let's go back to Saratoga shootout for a minute and talk about the
the
issues
gag
that have-
order and the 2 a.m.
Yeah. So I thought the gag. So basically, Diane Freestone, who's a Supreme Court judge, issued a gag order, as you heard from Commissioner Sanghvi, explicitly to Mayor Kim, Commissioner Montenegro, and apparently any public official or someone.
Right.
anyone
But we all
involved.
kind of know who that was directed at.
Right. And I just have to say, it was very reminiscent to me of, I don't know if you guys remember this, but back in like February, March, there was an issue. It was like a house party with high school kids. There was some issue, and Commissioner Montenegro was critical of the police department for not charging one of the kids with a higher charge. And he ended up talking about the victim extensively, who was a minor child, and revealing all these details about the family and the child. And the family actually then explicitly went to City Hall and said, could you please stop talking about this? Like, you know, for all the reasons you would not want your city government talking about your kid and, you know, these private details that should not have been released. And he just paid no attention. And I was actually at the city council meeting where it came up, and he started going into this lengthy explanation, again, talking about this minor child. And there were family members in the back of the city council room shouting, stop talking about this. We've asked you to stop talking about it. So to me, this is like very characteristic of Commissioner Montenegro. He is just has an insatiable need to pander to the media and to tell his narrative the way he wants to tell it. So he comes out looking great. And he doesn't care what the police chief or the leadership of the police department wants or needs in terms of protecting their investigation and what they're doing and getting their work done. That does not seem to be a priority for him at all.
Well, I don't know, Robin. That sounds like a bit much. I mean, I think if
No, I'm with Robin on that, by the way. But
I don't
because if you look back to remember the incident you brought up where the guy on the motorcycle fleeing police drove into the back of the truck. The police, I don't think it was the next day, but
I was in charge then.
Right. So
Yeah.
so there is. I know this, and there was a public interest in you know, putting out some of this body cam footage. For you have to weigh the investigation with the body cam footage. Now,
but the police department put that out. I didn't put that out.
The police department put it out.
Yeah.
Right. And so I mean, I think we've heard rumors that maybe the police department wasn't consulted or wasn't listened to with what was put out.
Yeah.
But right now it is we don't know. I mean, we know actually that the DA's office doesn't feel like they should be talking about or putting out any information. But there's always a balance act between public interest and the integrity of the investigation. Now, I will say I think probably they jumped the gun on this. It looks like that's what's happened, but we don't know for sure. Dan,
I think we do know for sure. When a Supreme Court judge issues a gag order like this, it's fairly unprecedented, is it not, Dan?
Yeah, John Kaufman, let's give some credit here. He, on his Saratoga Springs politics blog, has written extensively on this. He sent me the actual order from the Supreme Court judge, and just what it says here. Keep in mind, this isn't a grand larceny investigation. This is potentially a homicide investigation. If somebody dies, I don't know what exactly happened, so I don't know the nature of it, but it could conceivably easily be, it's a high level investigation. And 10 hours after it occurred, two civilian city heads, not the chief of police, who John Kaufman pointed out was really just relegated to the end of the table, talked extensively about this. In reading it here, what this order from the judge, together with the continued public comments characterizing evidence, speculating as a quality, quantity, or clarity of evidence, and presenting opinions or legal conclusions as to the ongoing investigation by the mayor of Saratoga Springs, the public safety commissioner. It goes on and on. My point is they potentially tainted this. This has to go to potentially grand jury, to a jury trial. And
we didn't know who the victims were yet.
This wasn't a racial incident that we knew of at the time. They could have dialed it back. They could have had the chief more involved. They could have got on the same page as the district attorney, which obviously they didn't. If they weren't on the same page as the DA.
So you and Robin are coming down pretty hard on this press conference.
I'm telling you, it's the fact that they are attorneys gives them this arrogance that they feel that they can speculate in this way and that it's legally correct, but not consulting with the police department or the state police in this case. I know that they'd had this press conference over the objections of the people who were investigating this shootout. And to me, you know, whether you have a press conference Sunday afternoon or Monday afternoon, it really doesn't make a difference. And to hinder an investigation and potentially, you know, taint it and make it impossible for the people responsible to be held accountable, there's no reason to put that in jeopardy. Just because, you know, you want to respond to all the social media nonsense.
Yeah, and it does, like Dan said, it does seem like there was no racial aspect to this. We weren't worried if the public was at danger.
There was no immediate threat.
There was no immediate threat. You know, like you see what's going on in Idaho with these 4 college kids. You know, and you wish the police would be more forthcoming about what's going on there. Because first they said don't be worried, and then, you know, the killer's still out there. But in this was not the case that happened in Saratoga. But you know, we'll see, and I'm really interested to learn the facts of this and who these Utica guys were, and you know, did this police officer feel like his life was in danger? You know, was there any justification for him using a pistol?
I just have to say that the few times that I wasn't able to release body camera footage when there was something that was in the headlines, if I could explain publicly the reasons why, they were all so like obvious, concrete, dumb, like, oh, wow, yeah, I get it. We can't release it because of da-da-da. Like, it wasn't like a nuanced situation ever. And so I just can't imagine, again, overruling my chief of police or the state police and pushing that aside to hold a media event. I just think it's crazy. And I think it's again, how Commissioner Montagnino has used the media, and it has not been healthy or helpful for our police department or for the city. I mean, he vets his ideas through the newspaper rather than the police department. Yeah. Whether it's closing down Caroline Street, whether it's, you know, hiring an outside police chief, whatever, he vets these ideas through the newspaper rather than with his own department first. And I think that's just so disrespectful.
All right, let's do this real quick. Let's talk about the 2 a.m. closing times, because Robin, I know they want to vote on it. And I think you've done this, right? So this might be a quick conversation here, but they're proposing the 2 a.m. closing times as whether it's a good idea or not. The city council is going to vote on it. What does that mean?
So basically, it means nothing. So it's just a performative measure that you have to take, and then you send it to the county. So in August 2021, we voted unanimously to shut bars down at 2 a.m. Then you have to hand it off to the County Board of Supervisors, because you can't just change the closing time for just the city of Saratoga Springs. It would have to apply to the entire county. So the County Board of Supervisors has to vote in the affirmative that they want to do that. And then it goes off to the SLA, and the state gives the ultimate, like, yes or no. Our 2 county supervisors, Tara Gaston and Matt Beach, it was so frustrating because they both immediately, especially Supervisor Beach, came out and said they were not in favor of a 2 a.m. closing time. And to me, it's like, that may be your personal opinion, but as a county supervisor, you're meant to represent the needs and interests of the city of Saratoga Springs. And the city of Saratoga Springs has just voted unanimously that we want this to happen. And so I don't think they made any effort to, you know, entice the county to take it up as an issue. They just, you know, came back and said, there's no appetite for this. There's no appetite for this, in which case it becomes dead in the water. Now, Mayor Kim and Commissioner Montagnino, with all of their legal genius, think that they can creatively, you know, legalese this and come up with another way to shut bars down to 2 a.m. We do issue Chapter 136 eating and drinking licenses every year to the bars. And there is, you know, a mechanism in which you could write into those renewals that the bar needs to close at 2 a.m. I don't know if that legally would hold up.
I don't think it would. I think it'd be a litigation magnet.
So I think so too. And I think that, you know, it was something we talked about in August 2021, because one of the ways that we thought we could legally do it is if there was a new permit for a new bar that was looking for, you know, the liquor license issue that Commissioner Moran was talking about when, like, the city council was getting,
yeah.
Yes. So in that instance, that was the only instance that I was aware of per our city attorney that we could have potentially put in a 2 a.m. stipulation. But to generally have them in the chapter 136, I don't think would hold up legally. So I don't see where this goes unless they do some really, really significant relationship building with the county board of supervisors, not just sending them a letter, not just asking them publicly, but calling them up and reaching out and talking to, the Phil Barretts of the world and talking to the leaders over there and really trying to convince them, and bring Chief Crooks with you, bring Sheriff Zerlo with you. They were both in favor of doing, it was the reason why we did this in August 2021 was because Chief Crooks and Sheriff Zerlo came to us, and Chief Crooks was like, he laid out all the data. He was like, I need this. Our police officers are going to get injured, or, people are going to get injured. This has to happen. So, I mean, but unfortunately, I don't see Mayor Kim or Commissioner Montanino taking that approach. And so I think it's just dead in the water.
In fairness to Supervisors Gaston and Veach, were they? I don't know that they were. At least in Supervisor Gaston's case, she was saying kind of like this will be dead in the water. I'm reading into what she said, but it seemed like she was saying this is going nowhere. I'm not even going to bother. I don't know if she said.
Supervisor Veach was more explicit. So, yeah, Supervisor Veach was more explicit about just he was against it, like himself. His personal opinion was it shouldn't happen.
But let's face it, it will go nowhere in the county, right? And even if those two joined up and said, please, we're pleading with you, because it affects, as you said, it affects the whole county, and they're not going to be for this. A lot of bar owners outside of Saratoga Springs, and inside for that matter, would be against this.
But it's so frustrating because actually, how many bars stay open until 4 a.m. outside the city of Saratoga Springs? Truly, like maybe a handful?
Probably, yeah.
I mean, because when we were doing this, we talked to Naira to make sure the Racino was okay with it. I mean, we talked to the stakeholders to make sure, everyone was going to be all right with it. And we were, I was trying to quantify how many bars this would affect outside of the city, and I really couldn't come up with anything.
I have to think there's probably a couple, but I just, it's a big county. We don't know what's going on in Clifton Park and Waterford and Yannicville for that matter, but not that many, right? Not that many.
There is this other option of going to the state to see if we could, I don't know the terminology, but to see if we could basically carve out the city and do this just for the city, like have some special circumstance or special exception be made by the SLA, so we could just have this as a citywide closing time. But I don't know if that would go through our assembly or, I don't know who would.
I think you'd have to change the state statute to allow, not just specifically for Saratoga, but perhaps any city that so moves and so forth. I don't know if that will get legs in the legislature, but I think the city council should approach our two representative in the Senate, the Senate and the Assembly, of course, Assemblywoman Warner, and now Jim Tedisco covers the whole city. Before he just covered he will cover it at the beginning of the year. Now he just covers a sliver of the city. But say, can you get this through and get this to the government?
What a shit show that would be if the whole state has to agree.
Well, exactly. There may be some. Listen, there's going to be a lot against it. There may be a few for it, but I think the city's within their rights to go for that. What I'll give Commissioner Montanino and Mayor Kim credit, they're trying. Do I think the way they're going about it is correct or logical? No, I don't. I think again, it'll just be it's a threat. It's a bluff, I think, to some degree, and a little bit of bullying. I don't like that approach, but as I criticize them, I want to say that I think their heart's in the right spot. They're trying to address this issue.
And it's just kind of funny that it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, the bars need to be shut down at 2 a.m. It's like, no shit. We've been saying this for how long now? This is not a new concept, but I mean, I guess it took a shootout for it to become, in the forefront of their minds or to want to do something about it. We have a comment actually from Tom Demopoulos that I was going to put up about the shooting information to the public. On one hand, social media is complimented for putting it on info in advance of traditional media, incorrect and presumptive as that info may be. But on the other hand, a presser with factual information is presented to traditional media and that gets used negatively. How should public be offered info? Yeah, can't have it both ways. Yeah, I think I agree with Tom. I think there's I see that inherent conflict.
Glad because Dan's gone.
What's that? Oh, Dan's covered up Dan with the comment.
Yeah, and if people don't know who Tom Sinopoulos is, he's a reporter for Saratoga Today. Great guy. Knows a lot about the city. So Tom, thank you for the comment.
I was trying to reread the comment. Can you put it up one more time?
Sure.
Dan, while you read it.
He's basically saying that you were complimenting, for example, what's going on in Saratoga for having all this info out, right away. But then we're also criticizing the press conference that was put out by, the city Sunday afternoon. So it's kind of,
Well,
that's
I take issue with Tom on this, and Tom and I get along. I just commended him on Facebook, I don't know, yesterday. These are public officials that have a duty to respect the criminal investigation. Social media, you're right, Tom. You make a point, but social media, we're not controlling that, are we? We can't control that. So I commend the site. You got to parse through it to find the correct information, but it is there. And yeah, there is all the negatives with that. I acknowledge that, but I do see that as apples and oranges.
I have to say, what I think this comes down to is the complete lack of relationship between the Commissioner of Public Safety and the Chief of Police. The Commissioner of Public Safety has clearly not engaged the Chief of Police. And to me, I don't have any inside information here. This is just my observation. To me, it does not seem like there's any working relationship there or desire to have a working relationship from Commissioner Montenegro. He, as we know, got rid of the assistant chief of police. So we do not have an assistant chief of police. And it just seems like there's a real disconnect between what the commissioner is doing and the leadership in the police department, which is just doesn't work out well for anybody at the end of the day.
All right. Cheers and jeers.
Cheers and jeers. What do you got, guys?
I'll kick off if you guys, Adam, if you're ready.
Go for it, Dan.
Okay, I am gonna cheer Thursday because tomorrow is the Victorian Street Walk. We should acknowledge that. And my Buffalo Bills are playing the hated, dreaded New England Patriots. Folks, if you're a football fan, you want to watch that. That's only on Amazon Prime. You're gonna have to pay for that, or NFL Plus, I think, is an option.
Is that game in Buffalo or New England?
New England.
It's in New England.
Outside of Boston and Buffalo, you will not get that on any sort of network TV. A couple of the bars have it. Harvey's told me they'll have it. PJ's Barbecue USA will have it. Presumably some others will have it. But if you're going to get it in your house, you're going to have a special streaming service to make that happen.
I commented on your post. There's a thing called Uzzo, UZZO.TV that streams every NFL game. And it's like $10 a month. It's great. And so you can watch every game always. You can only stream it on your mobile device, but it's at least an option. Anyway,
I'm not watching the Bills on my phone. I love that team.
Can you airdrop or not airdrop it? But
you can try to airstream it to your TV.
Airstream it to the TV.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Look at Robin.
That's my cheer. Taking a solemn note here. This is not a jeer, but just something sad. That it was a horrible construction accident last week, 2 days before Thanksgiving, at the Rip Van Dam location. A construction worker lost his life. He died 2 days later. Nelson Bernard, age 52, of Hoosick Falls, has a family. This is not a jeer. This is just the time I'm taking to give a solemn note and appreciation. That is just, it's horrible any time of the year, but 2 days before Thanksgiving, and he died on Thanksgiving. That just makes me so sad. And there's deaths and killings and everything every year at every time. This one was, around the corner from where I work. And it's a major location in our city that we see rising. So I had to mention that and acknowledge Nelson Bernard. May he rest in peace.
That is awful.
All right.
Well, do you want me to do my cheer and jeer here?
Go for it, Robin.
So my cheer is for Tina Carton. She has been a city employee for quite some time, and she oversees all the grant applications and sustainable green projects that we do in Saratoga. And she does the work of like 10 people in the city with all the grants that she manages, all the money that she finds for projects like, connectivity and sidewalks and parks. And I mean, she's just tremendous. And she is actually leaving City Hall and going on to another job, which is amazing. And I'm so happy for her. But I just wanted to acknowledge her and congratulate her, but also thank her so much for everything she's done for the city. Her contributions are truly remarkable in Saratoga Springs. And so I just wanted to cheer Tina Carton and thank her for everything she's done for Saratoga. My cheer, yes, congratulations. My cheer is Jim Montenegro. That's all I have to say.
All right. My cheer is the U.S. soccer team. Played a great game, advanced out of the first round of the group stages in the World Cup. If anyone didn't see it, they played Iran in a must-win game. Their Captain America, the star Pulisic, came through with the goal. And I also want to cheer the Iranian football team because this game, I think, represented much more than just a game. Iran and America are supposed to be enemies, but if you watch the national news, you see the what Iran's going through right now to bring equality and justice, especially to the women over there. And the Iranian players showed some support by not singing the national anthem in the inaugural game amid national reports that their families were being threatened. So it shows us that sport is more than sometimes just the sport, especially on the international level. You saw the American players hugging the Iranian players after the game, and it was just a really kind of special moment where you saw some young men go out and give their all, and excited to see the United States play Netherlands on Saturday. 2 jeers. First jeer, and I've jeered this before. This telephone pole right here. This is not how it's supposed to look. So whoever's in charge of that, Verizon says it's Niagara Mohawk or whatever it's called now, National Grid, the thing's gonna fall over in a week. So if anybody can help me with this, I don't know. I'm not a weather person. I don't know how they do that. That's my first.
You did well.
Yeah, you did well.
My second jeer, I'm going to get a little international with this, but if people look at what's going on in China right now, again, it's this oppressive COVID lockdowns, and the Chinese are kind of standing up. Now, where, Robin, you're not going to agree with me on this, but where I'm going to bring this back is when we had our COVID lockdowns, and I blame the far right for a lot of this. If you question anything in the lockdowns, you were kind of seen as stupid, as not following the science, as I think these issues, these complex issues need complex decisions. You need doctors, but you also need economists. You need need people to come together and not fight and bicker over this and make it a political partisan thing. Because you do see it can be taken too far, like what's going on in China.
China's totally different, though. I feel like basically the Chinese government just wants to show how much power they have over the people, because the idea of getting to a COVID zero is fucking insane. And what they have done to the Chinese people is tantamount to torture, in my opinion. But it set the precedent
that these lockdowns can go too far, right?
Yes, but I think there's such an enormous difference between what they've been doing for the last almost 3 years versus what happened in the USA. It's just it couldn't be further apart. You read about
you have lockdowns, you have masks, you have school closings.
No.
They take it more extreme, but it's not going to be further apart.
This would be like you're in Target shopping. All of a sudden, they lock the doors. Someone in Target's tested positive for COVID. Every single person in Target has to go to some camp to wait out their COVID exposure away from their home, away from their families. They don't get to call, check in, say what's happening. They get shipped off places. It's fucking terrifying. It is totally night and day from what happened here. And I'm sorry, it just is. It just is.
I don't think it's. I think they've taken it farther than the states did, but I think the states in some instances took it too far too. And I think this shows that these lockdowns and big government can take these, can overstep their bounds sometime. Again,
I think what it shows is that a communist dictatorship is no bueno all the time.
Yeah, well,
honestly, can you imagine if the U.S. government had something on your phone where you stepped outside and it said red light, green light, and red light means you can't fucking go outside. Yeah. Turn around, go back inside. It was.
No, my wife spent her early childhood under communism, so she actually doesn't have there's some. I hate to say this, I don't know if following me around, but there's some parts of her childhood with communism that if everybody's getting an orange for Christmas, what do you care? Everybody gets the same thing. Anyway, let's not go there.
Communism meets a pandemic brings out the worst of communism.
Communism and dictatorship. I'll say it in dictatorship.
Yeah. But anyway, guys, kudos to the Chinese people for being so courageous. Honestly,
hopefully they can sustain it because in this day and age, it's hard with the technology out there. It seems like dictators are getting more and more control. But anyway, all right, we got Poland playing in the World Cup. I got to go watch it.
All right, go.
All right.
Okay, next week I'm going to jeer my gray hair. Oh my God.
Let's go get a root touch up together, Dan.
Thanks, Charmy Saratoga.
Thanks for watching, folks.